Hi, my name's Steve Linger and welcome to Skills School. Right, you join me today. I'm at Makins Fishery on Lake 4 and I'm going to talk to you about one of my favourite styles of fishing, which is long pole shallow. Now, before I get talking about baits and feeding, the first and probably the most important part is getting your rigs right. So today, to fish shallow, I've set up two rigs. Firstly, I've got about 6-7 foot of water in front of me today, and the mistake a lot of people make when you say long pole shallow, they automatically set their float at 12 inches, fish that depth all day, maybe catch a few late on. You know, I like to be a little bit cleverer than that and start deeper. My thinking being, the fish don't start off competing for the bait really high in the water, you draw them up through the feeding. So for me it makes sense to start a bit deeper. So today I'm going to start fishing sort of 2'6" deep. Rig choice for this, starting off with a float. I've got a 4x10 KC Carper Chimp. What you might notice is it doesn't look like a normal Carper Chimp, as in I've modified it. I've shortened the tip by probably a centimetre and a half, and chopped a good inch off the stem. So I've made it more suitable for what I want it to be, which is a shallow float. So main line, I've got 0.17 end gauge main line, short 4-inch hook length of 0.15 end gauge, size 16 LWG hook, just tied using the knotless knot, and I've got a little bait band there just for banding a 6mm or an 8mm hard pellet. On the subject of shotting, again very simple. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 number 11 shots loosely strung out down the line, sort of inch apart, with the bottom shot just over 5 inches from the hook. So I'm getting when I slap or lay the rig in, I'm getting a nice slow arc, so that pellet's falling in a nice natural manner. One other quick word, you might think, oh, he's got a long line between float and tip. There's a reason for this. Firstly, the water's quite clear today, so when it's clear, when you're waving a pole about, if I'm only fishing a short line, which a lot of people do, the pole waving about can spook the fish. Also, there's a bit of a crosswind. The longer line just makes float control that bit easier. It makes it easier to slap the rig in and work the float. So some people, I find, they fish far too short a line because they think they have to. I'd rather fish a longer line, just make the whole process a lot simpler. So that's my first rig. Second rig is what I call my bagging rig. If they really start having it today, then I have to switch to this, which is what I call a more conventional shallow rig. Float choice, Mick Wilkinson Cookie, quite a short float, sort of dibber style, just ideal for fishing in the top sort of 16-18 inches of water. Line is again 0.17 Guru end gauge, short 4-inch hook length, size 16 LWG with a little bait band again. Quick word, slightly different shotting pattern, as in I've got a little mini bulk, sort of 4.5 inches from the hook. My idea behind this is, like, I'm a big fan of, where allowed, slapping the rig in, so the noise of the pellet and the float going in makes the carp think there's loose feeds. They come up to investigate. So by having a little mini bulk, I get like 3 plops. So when I slap the rig in, the float goes plop, the mini bulk goes plop, and the hard pellet. So I'm getting sort of 3 bites of the cherry. Lastly, elastic. I mean, a lot of different opinions regarding elastic. For me, when it comes to shallow fishing, unless I'm absolutely hauling, there is nothing better than white hydro. It's really soft, it allows me to lift into fish, and they can just slowly move out the swim under minimal pressure while I can continue to feed without worrying about that carp bolting off at 100 miles an hour. What I've got on an Intelastic puller kit, so once I get the fish under the pole top and I've done a bit of feeding just to keep those fish that are already out there in the swim, I can use the puller to put the pressure on the fish and get it in the net that bit quicker. So that's the 2 rigs. I'm sure you agree, nice and simple, but good theory behind them. On the bait front, as I've already touched on, I've got 2 baits with me today, and they're both pellets but in different sizes, 6mm hard pellets and 8mm. These are Green Swim Stims, which are the fishery pellet here at Makins. I'm going to feed and fish 6s to start with, just like little and often, 4 to 8 pellets at a time, to try and create like a constant rattle on the surface. The great thing about hard pellets when fishing shallow is they make a really nice plop 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 plop, which the carp love and they will home in on. I've got the 8mm just as a change of hook bait, so I start off with a 6, but if I'm not catching, or I feel as I've got to make a bit of extra noise when I'm plopping the pellet in to try and attract a carp, I switch to an 8mm. When an 8mm slapped in, it makes a really good plop, and sometimes that can be the difference between getting bites and not. So 6 and 8mm pellets, that's all I need. I've got 2 pints of 6s, half a pint of 8s. Let's do some fishing and I'll talk to you about the feeding along the way. Right, I've been prepping the swim now for sort of 10-12 minutes, just feeding 6 to 8 pellets every sort of 15 seconds to create that plop 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 on the water, which is hopefully going to have drawn a few carp into the swim. So I'm going to have a look. I've got the deeper rig out with the cut down Carper Chimp, hard 6mm pellet on the band. Let's see if we can catch a fish. Distance wise, I'm fishing 14.5. I mean, normally on this sort of water where I've got a lot of open water in front of me, 13 metres is the minimum I would consider fishing shallow, and sometimes it'll even be 16. But today I've gone for what I call a comfortable distance at 14.5. Rather than picking the catapult up straight away, I've literally just slapped the rig in 3 times. The reason being, as I said, I've been feeding it, so there might have been a carp, it doesn't look like there is, already sitting there with its mouth open, so to speak, waiting for a pellet to fall into it. Just slap it again 3 more times, but no bites, and now I'm going to start feeding again. Just 6 to 8 pellets. As I feed them, I'm literally just slapping the rig straight in on top of them. The slapping imitates the noise, I mean, it goes plop 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 as it slaps in, so it sounds like there's loose feed hitting the water. Keep a few pellets plopping in. Hardest part with this type of fishing, I normally find, is getting your first bite, which is the reason I like to start deeper rather than starting at what I call my bagging depth, which is 12 inches. Just lifting and dropping can work as well. Just lifting the rig sort of 6 to 8 inches and letting it fall again. Just important just to keep varying it up, as in slapping the rig in, lifting and dropping, keeping that hook bait on the move so it's always falling through the water, so to speak. Sometimes you just cut the feed out and just slap the rig in just to try and tempt one up. Oh, there we go. Once the fish is hooked, I mean, just keep the pole nice and low. That one come on the slap, I just cut the feed out, and while the fish is on its first run, just check where it is going, I can just continue to feed, just keep the whole process nice and smooth. Then the fish is just going to the right, nice and smoothly, just ship back. When I get halfway back, then just stop, a few more pellets, just so, like, if I was in a match situation and there's people around me feeding, I'm not losing all my fish to the anglers around me. I always like to break off as well on a top 4. The reason being, if the fish does decide to go again, I've got that extra section, whereas if you break off on a top gear, it's hard to get the whole pole back on. So by breaking off on the 4, it just keeps the whole process a lot simpler. Again, just jam the pole between your legs, elastic's doing the work. With a white hydro, I don't have to worry about it. Now I can just use the Intelastic kit to put the pressure on the fish. Nice little common. There we go. A small one by Lake 4 standards, but quite a pretty common all the same. Just drop him in the net. Let's see if we can get another. Straight back on with a banded 6mm. Because I've been prepping the peg while I was playing the fish, I'm going to go straight back in again, slap that rig in 3 times just to see if there's one waiting. Then just have that first drop and then pick the catapult up and start that feeding process again. It's all about keeping really busy. Something else which might seem quite basic to some people that I'll just talk about is sitting in the right position. When you're fishing long, shallow, it's vital that you've got yourself sitting right and sitting comfortably. I see loads of anglers saying, oh, I can't feed and hold my pole sitting like this, dead straight on. The reason you can't, it's impossible because all the weight of the pole's on your arm. If you notice, I'm sitting side on. So the weight of the pole is entirely on my legs and the elbow just acts as a pivot point. So literally, like, the weight of the pole's on my legs. Your feet should be flat to the floor. You don't want to be up on tiptoes because then your pole will start shaking, etc. Nice and flat, sitting side on. Just means both my hands are now free to feed. Elbow's the pivot point, weight of the pole on the legs. If I get a bite, all the striking is done with my left knee. So I just lift my left knee like so. Like lifting it a couple of inches here is enough to lift the float out of the water a good 8-10 inches out there. Just trying to mix it up a little bit with the feeding and the slapping. So that fish came when I hadn't fed for sort of a minute and a half. So I'm going to feed twice there. And I'm just going to cut the feed out again and just slap, have a minute slapping. So slap it 3 times. As soon as the float cocks, as in that pellet's settled underneath the float, have it back out, slap it again, and just keep repeating the process. It is really busy fishing, but to get the best out of shallow fishing, it's the way to do it. One more set of slaps and then we'll pick the catapult up again. It's just about trying to attract fish into the swim, that's the key. Another little trick that can work, I mean, some fisheries don't allow it, so if you're going to try it, check with fishery, particularly if you're in a match situation, because if it's not allowed it won't go down well, is just tapping. So I'm just tapping the tip of the pole on the water like so. It just makes the fish think there's pellets. It sounds like pellets, that tap 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 hitting the water. So I'll tap 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 the pole top and then just lift the rig and lower it where I've been tapping, so the fish come to the noise of the tap tap tap. The only pellet there is my one falling through the water, and it takes that because it hasn't got no choice, so to speak. That's a bite on the slap then. It's important as well, keep a tight, like when you're slapping, try and keep a tight line between float and pole top. So slap it in and don't just like move the pole to the float. This means you'll hit more bites if you can keep the line tight. It's lovely and flat now. Sometimes rather than slapping, just lift the float 6 to 8 inches and lower it. There we go. Again, just cut the feed out, and often that's the way it has to be. Fish is just moving, nice and smooth. I can keep feeding the swim while that fish is on its first run. That's not the best feeding. One more lot and then we can start. Actually, it's coming back at me now. Again, there's no rush. You know, I mean, they tend to be big fish in here, so just take your time. Sort of halfway back now, just drop the pole on my knee. Continue to feed. A couple more lots. It's just so if someone else around me is feeding, I'm not losing my fish to them. This one's going a bit. If it does want to go, you know what I mean, take your time and let it go. Chances are this one might be a bit bigger. I've just seen one, just fed them pellets there and there's a big vortex come up. So at least it says there's a few fish coming in. Using the puller just to get the fish under a bit of control. Oh, it's not a massive fish, a nice pretty mirror. There we go. It's quite a lively one. This is holding, it's quite a pretty one that. Let's just put the rig down. So it's quite a pretty mirror, this one. Long and lean, really scaly though. So there you go, a lovely mirror caught long pole shallow. Why don't you get out and give it a go?